All right, welcome back, everybody. It is currently 10:27 p.m. Central Time, Thursday, February 12th. Doing this later in the evening. Didn't plan to be up this late. At least not podcasting. So, Super Bowl wrapped up over the weekend, where we saw the Seattle Seahawks, uh, pretty much win in convincing fashion against the New England Patriots. Um, that was a fitting end, in my opinion, to what has been or what was a very subpar NFL season. It just wasn't that. I thought the quality wasn't very good. The product on the field wasn't very good. A very strange year where there wasn't a great team. Seattle emerged as that great team, but I don't think the Seattle team is anywhere near what Philadelphia was last year or the Chiefs the last 2 years. It was very similar to the 2021 season when the Rams won, where, someone's gotta emerge and it's the one that, gets hot, makes the fewest mistakes, what have you, and the Seahawks were able to do that. So congrats to them. Um and the game itself was not a very good game. So I said all that about the season. Not a very good season for the NFL. Not very entertaining, in my opinion. The product was very bad, and the Super Bowl was the exact same way. It was not an interesting game. It was 9-0 at halftime. It felt a whole lot worse than that. Although I will say, the longer that game went on, the more I was like, man, if New England has like one if Seattle makes one mistake on defense and New England has a cheat touchdown or whatever, and they get back right in this game, like this might get interesting because Seattle just kept kicking field goals and um, just looked like, man, they're just letting them hang around. Ended up not being a threat. And I'll get to the Patriots here in a minute, but the Seahawks, I mean, very impressive performance by them all year. There were multiple times this year where I questioned, like, are they really that good? And then, as I've said multiple times on this podcast the last few weeks, that Week 16 game against the Rams, everything changed for the Seahawks. I don't remember what the score was, but they came from behind to win that game, and then uh, won it close. Couple of things went their way, and they never looked back. They took control of the NFC West and then control of home field advantage and never looked back. They dominated the rest of the regular season. They dominated the Niners. They beat the Rams in the NFC Championship, and then they handled New England pretty well. So, but what's even more impressive about the Seahawks is this goes all the way back to the decision to move on from Russell Wilson, which was what, 2022, I believe. A decision that I probably came on this podcast, I definitely wrote about it, where I was like, "What the hell are they doing?" I was a staunch Russell Wilson defender for a few years, and there is an element with some of these teams. There are certain organizations, if they're willing to move on from somebody, I think everyone needs to be asking, why are they moving on from this guy? Uh, and those are things you learn just years watching the NFL. And Seattle choosing to move on from Russell Wilson, Seattle, one of the top 8 to 10 best run organizations in the NFL. Like I would say, in no order, like the Eagles are up there, the Rams, the Niners, Seahawks, Packers, Steelers, Chiefs. Um, anyway, that's seven right there. They're all Ravens. That's eight. I mean, they're all kind of in that same area. I have a lot of respect for all those organizations, and I think those are the best run teams in the league right now. And when the Seahawks decided to move on from Russell Wilson, nobody really asked the question of why they were doing it. We were critical of their decision to do it, and then they turned to Geno Smith, who was fine for them, oddly enough. had his 2 best seasons of his career in Seattle, and then they get rid of him, trade him to Vegas. Same situation. I'm like, you better hope the Sam Darnold thing works out because clearly when that happened, it was obvious that they were going to make a move on Sam Darnold in the offseason. And what ends up happening? Geno Smith leaves Seattle, and he goes from I think back to back Pro Bowl seasons to having one of the worst seasons of his career. So just Seattle made two gutsy moves there. They bring in Sam Darnold, someone who it's hard to it's hard to not root for Sam Darnold. Dude did not go into a good situation with the Jets, and the Jets are, one of those organizations like they just can't figure it out. They've had multiple chances, they've had multiple rebuilds, they've had multiple quarterbacks, multiple head coaches, and just cannot get it together. And Sam Darnold was in their building, and they moved on. I was a Sam Darnold guy when he came out. You can go look at the archives for me and James on this podcast. I was a Sam Darnold guy. We were both Josh Allen guys, but I like Sam Darnold a lot. And I will concede that, once he got to the Carolina years, I'd kind of given up on him. But even in Carolina, like he wasn't that bad. It wasn't good, but I remember watching him in Carolina, and I'm like, he looks better than what he did with the Jets. And then Carolina moves on from him. He goes to the Niners, and then the Vikings, and then the rest is history. Now the Seahawks, and the rest is history, I guess. But incredible turnaround to his career. Just goes to show, like, I didn't believe this a decade ago, but it really does depend on not so much who drafts you, but I mean, some of it is what kind of character do you have? Because everyone who gets drafted has the ability to be successful in the NFL. It does come down to what kind of person you are, like mentally, physically. Uh, and like, are you a football junkie? Do you want to live in the weight room? Do you want to live on the practice field? Some guys do, some guys don't. But it does go to show, like, really shouldn't give up on these guys so soon. Sam Darnold, this is what his seventh season in the league, and he's fine. Well, he popped in really in his sixth year in Minnesota. Um, and we have seen this happen. Aaron Rodgers didn't really pop until his sixth year. Jordan Love didn't really pop until his sixth year. It does happen to some guys. Um, typically you do need a couple years of being the starter, but it does happen where it takes a guy more than 5 years. It's rare, but it does happen. But it's hard to. Now I was rooting for Sam Darnold. I've always liked him. He seems like a good dude, and it's good to see somebody who just pro's pro. Seems like a good dude. Finally get his moment and deliver. He was awesome. Seahawks, well run operation. They've drafted so well over the years, and especially the last few years. Uh, Hit a home run in the draft this past year, and then they get Darnold. They hire Clint Kubiak, and then they're off. And the stars not necessarily aligned for them because they were a pretty good team already, but in a normal year they probably don't win this championship. So when I say stars aligning, it did align for them to win it all, but they were going to be a good team regardless. I picked them to win the NFC West, better than I anticipated, but the rest of the league was also worse than I anticipated, just a bit. So good for the Seahawks. I picked them to win. I mean, and they didn't just win; they dominated the game. That game, even though it was 9-0 at halftime, like I think I said earlier, it felt a lot worse than that. It felt like it was 21-0. Just not an entertaining game at all. The When the Seahawks scored a touchdown to go up, was it 16-0 or something? Maybe 19-0. Uh, I don't remember. Maybe it was. I forget what the score was, but James and I were texting, and when they scored the touchdown to go up, I think it was 16-0, maybe 19-0. And James said, or I said to James, ball game. And James said, "Dude, it's been ball game since halftime." And then the very next drive, I think the Patriots scored a touchdown. I was like, "Whoa, wait, it might not be over. It might not be." And then that was settled real quickly. Just not a great game. Seahawks deserve a ton of credit. Well run operation. Mike McDonald proven himself to be a really good coach and a defensive minded head coach at that. Um, yeah, I respect the Seahawks. They're not going anywhere. Now, I will say they probably won't be as good next year just because, like I said, I think the league was kind of down this year and they were the best of, the I'm not gonna. A saying came to my mind, and I'm not gonna say it on this podcast. But they were, the best of the what was a mediocre pack. But can't take a championship away from a city. That they deserve a ton of credit, and they're not going anywhere. Like they're going to be a problem next year. They don't have very many free agents. Sam Darnold's still under contract and at a bargain price too. Um, Good GM, good head coach. They're not going anywhere. And what's going against them is that I think the NFC is pretty loaded, and they're in a loaded division in the NFC. Um, as for the Patriots, I gave them the benefit of the doubt going into the game. And I said multiple times last week I thought the game would get ugly, but I was like, you know what? This is the Super Bowl. Like I'm sure they're going to show up. They really didn't, and I said to James the day after the Super Bowl, I said that is the fakest like not just AFC representative or representative of either of the conferences that I've seen in a Super Bowl, probably in all my years watching the NFL. That team was not a 14-win team in a typical season. They're not a 14-win team. They wouldn't be the AFC representative and they wouldn't have been in that position. But like I- it's not so much that things went their way. They just had one of the most fortunate draws I've ever seen for a team. And in the regular season and the playoffs, like regular season had the easiest opponent win percentage of a division winner in the last 25 years. And then they take care of business and then they get the 2 seed and then they draw 2 indoor teams and then they go on the road to Denver who had a backup quarterback by that point. Just a team that was not that talented, and I kept trying to think to myself, like, am I overlooking this team? Am I overthinking this? Or am I not, or not so much am I overthinking this? Am I not looking into this enough? Because when the Super Bowl matchup was set, I I penciled in the Seahawks like immediately as my winner, and I was like, maybe I'll change it, maybe I won't. I'll give it some more thought. And over the next 10 days, my mind hadn't changed. I said, I think the Seahawks are going to win this game, and I think there's a chance this game won't be close, and I was right. Just a very lopsided situation between the two conferences this year. It sucks because this is now back to back years we've had a very uninteresting Super Bowl. Just unfortunate for the league, unfortunate for the Patriots. Um, I think the Patriots. I don't think the Patriots are a bad team. They were just very inflated and had a very favorable path to the Super Bowl. This happens sometimes. They weren't a bad team. They just in a normal year they're not in that situation. In a normal year they're not in the AFC Championship. They are bounced in the wild card round or the divisional round, and we say, you know what, that team's going places. But it was just one of those years. Weak AFC. Patriots were relatively healthy and the number one seed lost their quarterback in the playoffs. A lot of uncertainty in the rest of the conference. They had a fortunate regular season and a normal regular season. The Bills probably win the AFC East, and the Patriots are a wild card team. So it shouldn't take away from the job Mike Vrabel did. They were a very well coached team. They're going places. I think that front office is good. Vrabel's a good coach. I'm not down on the Patriots. but we needed to slow down on the dynasty coming back. This was a one of one moment for the Patriots. This team still has a long way to go. They need to get better on the perimeter. They need to get better on the offensive line. And I think now you have to start questioning if Drake May's that good. I mean, he did not look great in the playoffs. All what? 4 games? Now I believe in Drake May. I don't think that that's the case, but I think it's a question people are going to be asking like is what we saw from him in the regular season really him? And I'm so happy that he didn't win MVP. I have a I have someone in my family who's a big Patriots fan, and he said uh, that May was going to win MVP, and I said, "Really, Drake May?" And he said, "Dude, he's been awesome." I said, "Come on, man! Like, he's not that good. He's good. I mean, that's like giving Sinners 16 Oscar nominations. Like, it was a good movie, but I don't know about that." Um, Patriots, I don't think they're going necessarily going anywhere. I think they have a very bright future with the guys they have on their team, but they are a prime regression candidate, in my opinion. The schedule will be tougher. They won't get the same uh, favorable draws in the regular season and the playoffs. Uh, and then you have the whole Super Bowl hangover too, which is a real thing if you do your research. So I just unfortunate for the Patriots, a team that like you're not going to apologize for being in the Super Bowl, but I think most people were I don't know. Patriots fans probably did think they were going to win the game, and I was like, I don't know how, but okay. But most people were like, I just don't see it. This is a very lopsided game, matchup wise, and it ended up being that way. So not an interesting game really at all. I talked about so those are my thoughts on the Super Bowl. Not a very particularly interesting game. You had some good storylines, mostly Sam Darnold, and two teams that I mean, Seattle's going to be in the mix next year. I feel pretty confident in that. I think New England has an upward trajectory. Just things just really went their way and put them in a situation they just really shouldn't have been in. Um, I don't necessarily think they're going anywhere though. But those are my thoughts on the Super Bowl. Let's go ahead and look to next year. Do a brief uh, preview for 2026. I'm going to take a drink of water. Okay. Um, where's the NFL? Here it is on FanDuel. So right now, this makes sense. I get it. The Seahawks are the favorites right now at plus 750 to win Super Bowl 61. Depending on how the rest of this offseason goes, I'm going to go ahead and reveal I'm not going to pick the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl next year. I think that they were just a right place, right time kind of team. When I say they're not going anywhere, I'm going to say I say when I say that it means I think they're going to be good next year. Do I really think they're a Super Bowl contender in any given year? No. Uh, good team, not a great team. Just right place, right time this year in a subpar season. But I understand that they're the favorites because while it was a very mediocre year for the NFL and not many teams stepped up, the Seahawks did. So you kind of have to put them first. And we'll see how the rest of the offseason goes. Maybe they don't have a great offseason, but that rarely happens in Seattle. The Rams are second at plus 800. Kind of interesting. Not a huge surprise. That might be my team to win the Super Bowl next year. They're going to have 2 first round picks. Like they have an option there of beefing up their O line. Like they're going to be able to hit on needs. And I doubt they draft a quarterback because I think Matthew Stafford said at the honors ceremony that he was coming back, which is atypical of him. Usually he likes to drag that thing out, I feel like. But They're gonna with those 2 first round picks, they're gonna be able to beef up their O-line or their secondary. They have a good pass rush. They have Stafford. They have 2 good pass catchers, in Nakua and Adams. And uh, is Tyler Higbee a free agent? I don't think so, but he might be. Yep, set to void next week, so it does look like he is going to be a free agent. Higbee, and I'm not convinced he'll be back. Yeah, he's a free agent in 2026. But the Rams know what they're doing. They're well run. They have a good coach. They have the pieces in place. That would be a team I would circle as a Super Bowl contender next year. Uh, and then the Ravens are plus 1200. This, I guess it makes sense because the Ravens didn't have a much go their way in the regular season. They had injuries. They were a mess. They coach, coaching wasn't great. They're moving on from Harbaugh for someone else. There's room for excitement. You got Lamar Jackson, healthy MVP candidate. Um, well-run operation. I understand why they would be the number one team in the AFC going in the next year, according to Vegas right now. I got to see how this goes with not McDonald, Mentor. Um, I mean, he's a defensive guy. Ravens no defense. I could see this working out. Um, but I'll get to the Chiefs, but that's pretty surprising. The Bills right now are plus 1200. So, the Ravens and the Bills are plus 1200. Same situation with the Bills. They have some pieces, although I feel better about the Ravens than I do the Bills right now. Bills pass rush, not great. Their O line, pretty good, not great. They do run the ball really well. They're not incompetent at pass catcher, but they do need to add another weapon. And then defensively, like they've been kind of meh, but they have Josh Allen, and that helps. But bringing in Joe Brady, I always want to call him Phil Brady after a West Virginia legend, Phil Brady, who was the punter who faked the punt in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia. I always want to call him Phil Brady, Joe Brady. Is it Joe Brady? Now I'm thinking to my. Now I'm going crazy. Yes, Joe Brady. Uh, um, it's time for bed. um, but they're in a such other situation. First year head coaches don't have, especially rookie head coaches, don't have a good track record with teams. So I would short both of these teams next year. Like I think they'll make the playoffs, depending on how the rest of this offseason goes, unless it's a train wreck of an offseason for both teams. I expect them to win the division. I expect them to make the playoffs, but I don't know about winning the Super Bowl. It's very unlikely for rookie head coaches to win the Super Bowl. It doesn't happen very often at all. First year head coaches, really in general, don't have great luck. Vrabel, he got there but lost. There have only been like a handful of coaches to win the Super Bowl in their first year, whether as a rookie head coach or in their first year with the team. It doesn't happen much. So you want a team with an experienced head coach, a couple years there, at least 1 year there. Uh, Packers are plus 1300. Probably shouldn't be a huge surprise. This feels about right for them. Uh, I think next year, well, next year in general will be a huge um, measuring stick for Green Bay because you could argue that since they've been the 7 seed in the NFC each of the last 3 years, that's the trend and that's who they are. I don't think so. Like I think the first time they were the 7 seed, you kind of have to rule that one out because no one expected them to be there. I mean, I picked them to make the playoffs, but I was kind of being biased. Um, Mostly just showing support for my team. Although I did have some data and went out on a limb to because I told myself all offseason, I was like, I'm not going to pick the Packers to make the playoffs. That was the first year they'd moved on from Rodgers and they ended up doing it. But anyway, so that first year they were the 7 seed in 2023. I don't think you can count that because no one thought they'd get there, and then they won a playoff game. But yeah, now 2 years in a row, it's been the 7 seed with an early exit. And next year is gonna be a real measuring stick for Green Bay. This team has to show it can put it together. Now, pressure's off of LaFleur. He got that contract extension. I still think that was the way to go for Green Bay. You don't wanna do anything too drastic. Um, but this core has to show that it can take that next step. And that's kind of unfair to say because I thought they took that step this year and then injuries happened. Um, between losing, I mean, they weren't just losing depth guys; they were losing frontline guys. Devonte Wyatt, Tucker Kraft, Micah Parsons. They lost Jordan Love for a couple games. Josh Jacobs dealt with injuries all year. Like, I think the Packers are a much better team than people saw at the end of the year, and that's how they're going to remember the team is losing their last 4 games and then blowing that big lead to Chicago in the wild card round. I get it, but I think Green Bay is better than people think, and I thought, before that Parsons injury specifically, you saw them take that next step as a team, which is what they've been waiting on. They've been waiting on this young Packers team to take that next step. Like I said, next year is going to be a better measuring stick. I hope, as a Packers fan, that the guys on the roster are motivated and are ready to go and are anxious to get back to where this team was in early December, which was holy crap! Like, we should win the North. We might even get home field advantage in the NFC. We'll see. But this team really needs to win the division next year. If they don't, I do think you have to start wondering if it'll ever happen, if this core will ever do it. So that's where I'm at with the Packers. Moving on. This one's surprising. The Chargers are after the Packers at plus 1,500 to win the Super Bowl next year. That seems crazy high to me. I like Jim Harbaugh. I like Justin Herbert. That's way too high. I still have a lot of issues with the Chargers. They don't have a great, they don't have, sorry, they don't have great playmakers offensively. I don't think their pass rush is that good. You just lost Jesse Minter. Maybe getting Mike McDaniel will help offensively and you can take that next step, but that seems way too high. I like the other teams in the AFC West more. Who I'll get to here in a bit, but I think that's too high for the Chargers. Eagles also plus 1,500 after the Chargers. Feels about right. Eagles, James and I were talking about the Eagles this week. And he was saying how, they might lose some guys to retirement. And it just feels like in general, the Eagles are probably going to hit a little bit of a reset button this year. I think they will move on from some guys, and this roster could look a little differently next year. And we know, did Vic Fangio retire? Did I read that somewhere? Or was that just like a random report? There's been so much news. Yeah. He is remaining, looks like, with the Eagles. That's not surprising. He's a football junkie. Um, but this feels about right for the Eagles. I think they have some question marks. I think that O-line has aged a little bit. They're might lose some guys on that offensive line. Uh, Pass rush, pretty good. The talk is kind of quieted down, but there's a chance they might lose AJ Brown and some just there are a lot of veterans on this team that Lane Johnson might retire. They might lose Dallas Goddard. They might lose Reed Blankenship. Like, there are several guys, and you look up after free agency, and there's a chance that you look at the Eagles and you say, "Wow, this team is not where it was when it won the Super Bowl in 2024." So, third best in the NFC or fourth best in the NFC for the Eagles. That feels about right. Lions following up the Eagles at plus 1,600 feels about right. I think the Lions have a lot of question marks this offseason. The O line, which was a strength, really regressed last year, and Jared Goff struggled. Defensively, they weren't great. Didn't have much of a pass rush outside Aiden Hutchinson. And the roster, they've always been dealing with injuries. The roster's become a little top heavy, which happens when you pay guys. It's not really an indictment of the Lions. But the absence of Ben Johnson was evident. The offense never really got going, and Dan Campbell took over play calling. It wasn't great. It was kind of the same. The Lions need to really do some work on that offensive line. They gotta beef it up and hope that the new coordinator finds a way. Did they hire a new coordinator? I've already forgotten. I want to say they did hire a new coordinator. I don't remember. There's been so much news lately. Petzing from the Cardinals. Yeah, I thought so. They did hire a new coordinator. So you Lions have some questions that need to be answered, and we'll see. I mean, the brutal division. I think they're probably the second best team in the division after Green Bay in a normal year. Um, I think Dan Campbell's a really good coach, but in this day and age, like you got to have your like handprint on one side of the ball. You know, McVay calls plays offensively, and with the Rams, Shanahan, Lafleur, even defensive guys like Vrabel, McDonald, like they have their hand somewhere in the pot, and they're either helping one side of the ball or the other. Campbell's not doing that. Campbell's a CEO head coach. It doesn't not work. I think it's very overrated, and you saw this past year when he doesn't have Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn, they were struggling. They couldn't right the ship, and that happens sometimes when with coaches like that. You just kind of have to, it feels like they just throw their hands up and say, "I can't do anything. This isn't what I do. I'm not a core. I'm not. I'm a CEO. I don't have my hand on either side of the ball." Um, so that's where I'm at with the Lions. And then we have the Chiefs coming in at plus 1600, which seems way too low. I get that some areas of the Chiefs have aged or regressed, but this team still has Andy Reid. This team still has Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to pick this team to win the AFC West next year. I don't care what you tell me. I think the Broncos regress. I don't think the Chargers are better than the Chiefs. I think we're really short in the Chiefs, and I think that's stupid. I think the Chiefs are still really good. They couldn't stay healthy. Didn't have many breaks go their way this year. They that's why they finished so bad was they didn't have many breaks. They were injured a lot and um, lost a lot of close games. Games that they were winning the previous year, which happens. Like in those one score games, and you win a lot of them. It's not going to happen the next year, and it didn't for the Chiefs. Now you don't go typically from 11-0 to what were they like 1-9? That doesn't happen typically. Usually you go from 11-0 to 6-5. But I think people are shorting the Chiefs, and I think it's dumb. Moving on, Patriots at plus 1700. This seems too high. Patriots, I think, are a good team, but I would short them next year. Super Bowl hangover, tougher schedule, won't catch the same favorable draws in the playoffs. I don't think they'll be as good next year. Niners at plus 1800 next. I think they're another regression candidate. I think that they had a very favorable schedule this year, had some bad injury luck, but were able to make the playoffs because they had such an easy schedule. I mean, it wasn't the easiest schedule, but when that schedule released last year, I remember thinking if this team was the 2022 or 23 Niners, they would win 15 games easily. And they won 12 with a roster that had lost a lot of good players. I expect that to come back to, regress to the mean, as our boy Adam Lefko used to say this year. Niners feel like a regression candidate. And then I'll end it here. Well, no, I'll go a little bit more. The Broncos, Jags, and Texans are all next up at plus 2,000. That feels about right. Broncos actually, I think the Jags and Texans are probably a little too low. Broncos are about right. Broncos caught a lot of breaks. I know that they lost Bo Nix in the playoffs, but won 11, I think, of 13 one-score games in the regular season. I think they had an inflated record. They caught a lot of breaks. I don't think that's gonna happen next year. I think that they're gonna lose a lot of those close games, and Bo Nix never really took a step forward, which is always my concern with him. I thought he'd give you a really good rookie season and then he wouldn't get much better than that. And that's what so far that's what's happened. We'll see if Sean Payton can fix that. They can go back to the drawing room and get better and attack next season and be better offensively. But the Broncos caught a lot of breaks in 2025. Breaks that will not go their way, I don't think, in 2026. Jags feel a little low. So do the Texans. Now, what I will say for the Texans is their defense is awesome. Offense is trouble because CJ Stroud has done nothing but regress since his rookie year. So Texans feel about right. Jags, I think, are a little low. I'm high on the Jags. Now, what I will say for the Jags is they have to show that they can put it together. I don't think the Jags have made the playoffs in back-to-back seasons since Tom Coughlin was their head coach. If y'all even knew Tom Coughlin was their head coach, I didn't for the longest time. Until I was about I don't know 2015 range maybe, but I don't think they've made the playoffs in back-to-back seasons since then. They need to put it together in back-to-back seasons. But I like the Jags. I like a lot of their players on their roster. Decent O line, decent pass rush. Like it's not horrible. It's not great. It's not horrible. Trevor Lawrence took a big step in their development. Liam Cohen seemed to be a very bright head coach. Very winnable division. I think the Jags will be fine, but they need to show. I don't think they're a regression candidate right now, but they need to show that they can make the playoffs like year in, year out. Not just pop up every, what, 7 years and have a team that can make a run, which is typically what they do. Then we have we have the Bears coming in at plus 2,700, which is hilarious. I will say maybe we're being a little too hard on the Bears. Um, but I do expect regression from them. They caught so many breaks last year. Even with a schedule that really wasn't that tough, they'll have a tougher schedule this year. The division should be healthier and better. Like I expect the Lions and Packers to be healthier. Then you have the Vikings, who are no joke. Um, that you won't catch the same breaks next year. Might have worse injury luck because they were kind of the healthiest team in the division. I know they weren't the healthiest team in the league, but they were the healthiest team in the division, I think, for the most part. Maybe the Vikings, but wasn't the Lions or the Packers. So Bears, Vegas is kind of showing you though that the Bears seem like a flash in the pan. I think Ben Johnson's a bright head coach. I'm more skeptical about their future than others. I don't think, what everyone else thinks that the Bears, like this is going to be the worst version of the Bears. I think there's a chance was the best version of the Bears that we're going to see because they got issues and everyone's going to point to how well they did this year, but they were another team I think had an inflated record, shouldn't have been in that position. In a normal year, maybe they win 8 games. Maybe they beat the Packers in December, and we start thinking, okay, or maybe they finish 9-8, get that 7 seed. But in a normal year, they're closer to 500. That's kind of what they were, and they just kept pulling these heroic moments out of their butt in the final 2 minutes of every game, and that's just not sustainable. Now, maybe it's a situation where they improve from within. I'm skeptical of that happening. I don't think the Bears are that good. I don't believe in Caleb Williams. I don't believe in their defense. I thought their defense was quite bad. Ben Johnson, good coach, very bright offensive mind. We'll see with the Bears. Another team hasn't made the playoffs in back-to-back years, I think since Lovie Smith. So I have my doubts for the Bears, and clearly Vegas agrees. So I'm gonna leave it there. That's a quick preview for next year after what was a pretty average Super Bowl. Everyone enjoy. Some of you might have a long weekend. I do because I'm going home to visit my family. Um, but some of you will have a long weekend because Monday's a holiday. I will say this: if you have time, watch the U.S. men's hockey team. Got a real shot at the gold, I think. I'm just a casual hockey fan, but I think we got a real shot at the goal. Very fun team to watch. Highly recommend it. But they play Saturday and they play Sunday in round robin, and then they'll enter the tournament stage of the Olympics. Uh, I'm very much looking forward to watching them. I love hockey, love America, and I would love to see us get a gold for the first time since 1980. And I think they have a real shot of doing it this year. So I'll leave it there. Y'all stay safe and have a good weekend.